You are weak because you are distracted. You chase approval, drown in opinions, and scatter your mind across 1,000 worthless concerns. In this video, I will hand you the blade that carves power from solitude, not peace. Power. And that begins with the most feared discipline of all: self-focus. In a world where men clamor for validation and drown in the noise of others, the rare individual who turns inward becomes dangerous. The crowd sees solitude as suffering. I see it as strategy. When a ruler seeks to dominate, he does not first conquer others. He conquers himself. This is not about self-love. It is not even about self-improvement. This is about weaponizing your own mind. Today, we descend into the black chamber of self-focus. Not as monks, but as sovereigns of psychological warfare. You wish to gain power, not merely to appear strong, but to become untouchable. Then listen carefully, because what I am about to show you is not poetic. It is surgical. It begins not with others, but with isolation. Not the isolation of the hermit, but of the sovereign. There is a reason kings sat alone on thrones. Not to feel admired, but to see clearly. What clouds your judgment? What weakens your moves? It is not always your enemy. Often, it is your attachment. Your endless thirst for input, approval, connection. You believe being connected makes you informed, but you are merely distracted. The man who cannot detach from the noise of the world that will be ruled by it. When Caesar crossed the Rubicon, he did not seek counsel from the crowd. He walked alone with decision burning in his mind. He did not need consensus. He needed control. And you? How much of your energy bleeds into conversations that serve no purpose? How much of your attention is given freely, like coins tossed into a beggar's cup? You respond to every message. You explain yourselves to people beneath your ambition. You argue online, as if dominance is proven through likes. Foolish. A distracted mind, a conquered mind. Psychology tells you attention is a limited resource. Cognitive load is real. When the brain is overwhelmed with trivial stimuli, it cannot prioritize strategy. That is not weakness. It is biology, and the one who understands this uses it. Let me ask you this: when you walk into a room, do you observe or absorb? Most absorb. They take in the emotions of others, mirror them, become them. They lose themselves in the presence of louder personalities. This is mental poverty. The strategist, by contrast, enters with a sealed mind. He observes. He analyzes. He does not react. He calculates. Because he has trained in solitude. He has sat in silence and studied himself like a general studies the battlefield. He knows his own impulses. He has interrogated his own fears, and so no external force can hijack his direction. Think of a blade. Sharp, precise. That is what internal isolation does to your mind. You are no longer scattered. You are no longer emotionally kidnapped by every passing mood or insult. You become terrifying. Because nothing surprises you. Because no one truly knows what you're thinking. Because your energy is yours, and yours alone. In the courts of Florence, men fought with smiles and compliments, but the real war was silence. Those who could remain still, unprovoked, unreadable. Those were the ones who rose. And today, the battlefield has changed, but the weapons remain the same. Most people will never go a day without external validation. They require noise to feel alive. But you, if you wish to rule yourself, you must first walk away from the crowd, not in body but in mind. Withdraw your attention. Cut the cords. Observe how uncomfortable it feels, and then sharpen it. The discomfort is your mind detoxing from dependency. What follows is clarity. This is not introversion. It is inner discipline. You are not hiding, you are fortifying. And from that fortress, you will begin to see what others cannot. Their desperation, their lack of direction, their addiction to distraction. And you will begin to move differently. Conversations will become tools. not escapes. Silence will become your home, not your prison, and you will speak not to be heard, but to be obeyed. This is the first law of mental sovereignty: withdraw in order to dominate. Lie. Because the man who does not need the world be has every advantage over those who do. But this is only the first gate. Now that you've stepped away from the crowd, what do you feed your mind? Where does your attention go when the world no longer pulls it? If that was the lie, what you choose next will define whether you become a sovereign thinker, or simply a man alone in the dark. Continue to the next segment, where we expose the ruthless precision of selective attention. You've withdrawn from the noise. You've begun to taste silence. Now comes the next move. Not passive retreat, but calculated selection. Your mind is no longer a battlefield. It is a throne room. But the question remains: who and what will you allow to enter? The average man consumes everything: news, opinions, conflict, gossip. He opens his attention like a market stall, and sells his mental space for cheap. If you desire control, your attention must be weaponized. Ask yourself, would a general allow his army to wander aimlessly through foreign territory? Would a king throw open his gates to every beggar and bard? Of course not. Yet every time you scroll without aim, speak without purpose, or react without pause, that is exactly what you do. You become mentally conquered by lesser minds. Understand this: your attention is not passive. It is power. And wherever it flows, your energy follows. This is why rulers do not speak often. This is why strategists observe before they act. Because attention given is influence surrendered. Let me offer you a truth that most will reject: not all knowledge is power. Most of it is distraction, noise disguised as insight. The man who tries to know everything understands nothing deeply. Selective attention is not ignorance. It is focus with a blade. In the Renaissance courts, a prince could be ruined by hearing too much. Spies, flatterers, false advisors, all eager to pull his will in 10 directions. The wise ruler listened rarely, and when he did, it was only to what served his aim. And you, what is your aim? If you don't know it, you will be enslaved by the aims of others. Every headline you chase, every crisis you react to, every emotionally baited post you entertain, these are not harmless diversions, they are intrusions. Psychologically, your prefrontal cortex, the seat of reason and long-term planning, has limited bandwidth. What you feed it determines your ability to lead. This is not metaphor. This is neuroscience. The more scattered your inputs, the weaker your executive function becomes. Decisions blur, impulses rise. You become reactive, not strategic. Exactly what those who seek to control you desire. Let's be direct. Do you follow people who empower your mind or provoke your emotions? Do you consume to learn or to escape? Do you let algorithms train your thinking? Or do you dictate what enters your field of awareness like a monarch filters guests at his court? If you want power, you must become a mental gatekeeper. Unapologetic, ruthless. This means choosing discomfort over entertainment, silence over stimulation, depth over dopamine. And when you do speak, let it not be reaction, but revelation. Look at history. Alexander read the Iliad obsessively, not as poetry, but as a blueprint for conquest. He did not flood his mind with trivia, he fed it visions of kingship. So what are you feeding yours? In every moment, your mind is being molded. The question is, by whom? Every image, every voice, every piece of media you allow in. These are architects of your worldview. If you do not choose them, they will choose you. And they will not choose in your favor. Here lies the Machiavellian truth. The world is not built to enlighten you. It is built to distract you. And those who feed the masses know, an unfocused mind is easily governed. But the man who filters input with discipline becomes unpredictable. Why? Because his mental terrain is unknown. His mind does not echo the crowd. He is guided not by what is popular, but by what is useful. You begin to speak less, but command more. You become immune to trivial slights. Your moves grow quiet yet devastating. And soon they begin to ask, what is he thinking? That is the power of selective attention. You no longer chase the world, you make it chase you. But if you think mastering attention is enough, you are mistaken. Because beneath attention lurks something even more volatile, more fragile, more dangerous if left unchecked, your ego. And until you learn to bend it, it will bend you. In the next segment, we sharpen that blade. Prepare to turn ego from a weakness into a weapon. You've pulled away from the noise. You've begun to filter the chaos. But there is still one enemy lurking, one far more cunning than any rival, closer than any spy, your ego. You believe it's your ally, your confidence, your sense of identity. But I ask you, when has it truly served your strategy? How many times has your ego spoken for you before your mind had a chance? The ego craves reaction. It demands recognition. It turns silence into insecurity and correction into insult. And that, precisely, is why it must be tamed. Understand this. Power is quiet. Ego is loud. One controls outcomes. The other chases applause. You cannot rule both the world and your image. Choose. Now let's be clear. This is not about becoming humble. That's another lie society sells you. You are not being asked to shrink. You are being told to conceal, to refine the ego, to turn it from a flame that burns into a blade that cuts. The most dangerous man in the room is not the loudest. He is the one who does not need to be seen. Why? Because he has nothing to prove. He does not speak to be praised. He does not posture for approval. He calculates silently, while the others perform for mirrors. Think of the chess master. His expression never changes. He loses a piece, no reaction. He takes yours, still nothing. That is psychological warfare. And it begins with ego control. Let's look at César Borgia, a man of ambition, ruthlessness, and restraint. He did not parade his power. He demonstrated it through outcomes. When he entered a room, he allowed others to speak first, to boast, to overextend. He observed, measured, then acted decisively. Because his ego did not command his tongue, his will did. You see, ego wants to be right. Strategy wants to win. Which one rules you? If someone insults you publicly, what do? Defend yourself, argue back? You've already lost. Why? Because they dictated your next move. Your ego reacted, not your reason. But imagine this instead. You do nothing. You smile. You let the silence grow thick and heavy. Suddenly, everyone wonders, what is he thinking? You've stolen the moment, without speaking a word. This is not weakness. It's control, and control is terrifying to those who lack it. Psychologically, this is called internal locus of control. The belief that your outcomes are determined by your decisions, not by others' actions. When your ego is weak, your sense of power comes from outside. You must be praised. You must be validated. But when your ego is disciplined, the world becomes irrelevant. You respond only to mission, not emotion. This terrifies people, because they cannot manipulate what they cannot provoke. A man ruled by ego can be baited, flattered, offended, mocked into reaction. But a man ruled by purpose, he cannot be reached. That is the beginning of psychological invincibility. Now ask yourself, do you walk into rooms needing to be admired? Do you speak to impress or to influence? Do you react or do you rule? The truth is, most people live as prisoners of ego, and they serve their own weakness proudly. They confuse performance with power, validation with value, and so they are always exposed. But not you. Not if you choose to master this blade. Control your ego, and you control your frame. Control your frame, and you control the room. And once you control the room, you control the outcome. But even this is not the final level. There is another posture more powerful than control, more terrifying than presence. It is absence, not passivity but deliberate disappearance. The cold art of withholding, and that is where we go next. Because the power you remove becomes the power they chase. You've learned control. You've silenced your ego. Now it's time to disappear. Not from life, but from their reach. You see, most people make the same fatal mistake. They believe presence is power. That to dominate, you must constantly be seen, constantly be heard. But in truth, presence creates expectation, and expectation breeds entitlement. The more available you are, the less value you hold. So let's be clear, absence is not weakness, It is a calculated vacuum, a deliberate silence that makes others lean forward. Not to help you, but to wonder where you've gone. And when they wonder, they weaken. Look at history. When the prince retreats from the court, whispers begin. Why is he silent? What is he planning? Is he displeased? The room becomes nervous. Eyes search the door. The absence becomes heavier than any speech he could have delivered. That is power. Why? Because presence can be challenged. Absence is harder to fight. You can't argue with a shadow. You can't outshine a mystery. Think of it in psychological terms. The human brain fills in gaps. We project, imagine, exaggerate what we cannot see. So when you are not around, they create your myth. They imagine your standards. They speculate on your moves. And this uncertainty becomes your weapon. But let's go deeper. Why is it that people fear being left out? Why does silence disturb them more than insult? Because silence robs them of control. It leaves them in ambiguity. And the mind hates ambiguity. So when you withdraw your attention, when you withhold your presence, when you do not respond to every message, every invitation, every pull on your time, you disrupt their psychological safety. Now, they begin to question themselves. Did I offend him? Is he testing me? Is he beyond me? You've created a tension they can't resolve, and that is influence without force. But of course you must wield absence strategically. Too much, and you become forgotten. Too little, and you become common. This is the art: disappear just long enough to be missed. Return just long enough to be felt. This was the tactic of powerful rulers. They would vanish from court affairs, then return with a decree, a punishment, or a new vision. Their unpredictability preserved their power. You must do the same. Don't be constantly visible. Be selectively known. Let your presence feel earned. Withdraw from unnecessary circles. Starve unworthy connections. Appear rarely, only where it matters. And when you do return, say less. Speak with intent. Deliver impact, not conversation. This contrast sharpens your influence. In relationships, absence creates desire. In leadership, absence breeds respect. In war, absence conceals intent. Why show your hand when mystery provokes more fear than clarity? But there is another dimension to this. Withholding is not just external. It is internal. You must learn to withhold your emotions, your thoughts, your reactions. The moment you reveal everything, you surrender leverage. Instead, become unreadable. In negotiations, say less than you think. In arguments, speak last. In conflict, delay your reply. Your silence forces others to reveal themselves first. And in that pause, you see everything. They show their motives, their insecurity, their limits, all while you remain still. That stillness is not passive. It is a trap. And the more they fill the silence, the deeper they sink. Now ask yourself, how much do you withhold? Or are you constantly explaining, posting, proving? If so, understand this. The man who shows too much is owned. He has no privacy, no mystery, no psychological edge. He is common. And the common man is easily controlled. You must learn the power of being almost visible, of saying almost enough, of being almost reachable. And in that almost, you become magnetic. But make no mistake, this tactic requires discipline. Your craving to be understood must die. Your hunger to be recognized must be silenced. Only then can absence become your sword. Only then do others begin to chase what you no longer offer freely. And once you've mastered absence, there is one domain left to conquer. The final empire of control, your own mind. Because without ruling yourself fully, you will always be someone else's pawn. And in the final segment, we build the inner empire, where every thought is either sharpened or silenced. You have withdrawn. You have mastered focus. You have silenced ego. You have disappeared with intent. But now, the ultimate test remains. To rule your mind as a sovereign rules a kingdom. Because if you do not command your own thoughts, you will always be subject to another's will. Do you believe that your mind is free? Or are you a prisoner of impulses, emotions, and fleeting desires? Look closely. How often does your mind wander? How often do you find yourself caught in cycles of doubt, fear, or craving? This chaos within is no accident. It is the battlefield where all true power is won or lost. The greatest rulers understood this well. Caesar Borgia did not only conquer armies, he conquered himself. He disciplined his mind like a fortress. Every thought, every feeling was either a soldier obeying orders or a traitor to be cast out. What of Alexander the Great? His unstoppable march was not merely physical. It was mental, a relentless drive forged through self-command. You see, the mind is a volatile court. There are ministers, desires, fears, hopes, each demanding attention, each plotting their own agendas. If you are not the ruler, they become your masters. You lose control. Psychology calls this ego dysregulation. Your impulses hijack decisions. Your fears dictate action. You become reactive, not strategic. But imagine a different scene. A ruler who silences the dissenters inside, who listens to the advisors only when they serve his plan, who rules not by emotion but by calculation. That is the inner empire. How do you build it? First, you become the observer of your mind, not the prisoner. When anger rises, do you act or do you watch? When desire calls, do you chase or do you hold? This distance, this detachment, is your throne. It does not mean you are cold. It means you are clear. Stoic philosophers understood this well. Epictetus taught that we do not control external events, only our reactions to them. Master your reactions, and you master your fate. Now, listen closely. Controlling your mind requires relentless discipline. You will be tempted. Tempted to believe every thought. Tempted to act on every impulse. But every impulsive act is a surrender. Remember the lesson of the ancient generals. Hannibal crossed the Alps not by reckless bravery, but by careful planning and restraint. Your mind is no different. When fear or doubt intrudes, do not suppress it blindly. Acknowledge it. Analyze it. Use it. The fear of defeat can sharpen your strategy. The desire for success can fuel your patience. But if you allow them to rule, you become a slave to chance. Look at the political chessboard of the Medici courts. The most dangerous men were those who controlled their inner demons. They did not explode in rage or grovel in despair. They controlled the narrative inside their heads first, and that control radiated outward. Others sensed it. They feared it, because a man who commands himself commands the world. But beware, this is a lonely path. The mind is filled with distractions designed to seduce you away from sovereignty. Pleasure, anger, envy, laziness, all like poisonous courtiers whispering lies. You must learn to silence them. To cultivate mental silence where strategy is born. Meditation is not mystical nonsense. It is the daily drilling of your inner guards. This is why great leaders take time alone to sharpen the mind's blade, to cleanse it from chaos. Now, consider this. What if you allowed every stray thought to decide your actions? You would be a leaf in the wind, a puppet of your own mind. But if you build the inner empire, you create a fortress no storm can breach. Every thought is a soldier, every feeling a tool, every moment an opportunity to strengthen or weaken your reign. Ask yourself, are you the ruler of your mind or its servant? Because the difference defines your fate. And here is the brutal truth: without internal empire, external conquest is an illusion. You may gain power over others, but never over yourself. And power over yourself is the only power worth having. The final step is not easy. It demands ruthless honesty, constant vigilance, and a willingness to burn what no longer serves you. You will lose friends. You will lose comfort. You may even lose yourself. But in that loss lies true gain. Because the man who rules his mind rules everything else, and the man who does not will always be ruled. Prepare yourself, for the mastery of self is the last fortress to storm. In the next segment, we reveal the rituals and disciplines that transform this empire from theory into reality. Control does not begin with orders. It begins with invisibility. You do not dominate by force. You dominate by suggestion, by silence, by mastering yourself until others adjust to your presence without understanding why. You do not need their obedience, only their anticipation. When they guess what you're thinking, you're already leading. When they speak to fill your silent seat, you've already won. The greatest power is exercised without resistance. because they believe it was their idea all along. You gave nothing, and they gave everything. That is the art. Now ask yourself, do you wish to be liked, or do you wish to be obeyed? If you choose the latter, then this channel is your war room. Subscribe now, comment your reflections below, and share this with one mind you think is ready to rule rather than be ruled. Because those who understand these rulers don't need to be loud. They only need to be undeniable.